All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're live on Facebook with the American English for Educators Facebook page team. My name is moderator Kate, and I am behind the scenes today in the background producing. And you will be seeing today our presenter, John Mark King. He is with the Office of English Language Programs here in Washington, D.C.
Hi, everybody.
And a little bit later, you'll see our presenter, Mari Bodensteiner. So without further ado, John Mark, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you. So thanks everyone so much for joining us today.
Sure. Hi, welcome everyone. This is the first session in our new series, American English Live, Teacher Development. My name is John Mark King. I work here in Washington, D.C. at the Office of English Language Programs. And just like Kate, I'm part of the American English social media team. And I'm very happy to be your facilitator and host today. Let's start this series with a look at this great photo that shows English teachers participating in an American English professional development event. We love to see teachers learning and exchanging ideas. Please share your viewing photos by emailing them to americanenglishwebinars@elprograms.org. We might even feature them in the next session. But now let's take a look at our schedule for this series. You can see that we have a great lineup of presenters and topics all the way throughout. This month, we're focusing on creating a positive classroom community. In February, we'll explore topics related to our upcoming eTeacher MOOC, critical thinking, and culture. Then in March, we'll be focusing on getting our students moving and active in the English language classroom. We look forward to seeing you for all of our sessions, which will be held at 8 a.m. or at 1 p.m. Eastern Time from Washington, D.C. But they'll be broadcast from here on the American English for Educators Facebook page. So, our sessions are 60 minutes long. As we said before, each one is related to an American English MOOC or website. You can participate in this session by responding to our questions or making comments underneath this post. We hope to respond to as many people as we can during the session. Feel free to include your first name and your country when you reply so that we can give you a shout out. So now we'd like to officially announce that American English is launching its second MOOC. If you don't know what a MOOC is, it's a massive open online course, and it's 100% free for English language teachers. The Integrating Critical Thinking into the Exploration of Culture in an EFL setting MOOC presents participants with a working definition of culture and tools for analyzing, understanding, and negotiating differences between cultures. Participants explore what critical thinking is and why it's necessary for the development of intercultural competence. With a view towards preparing teachers to implement culture and critical thinking lessons into their current teaching context, participants work through numerous examples of related activities and lesson plan elements, as well as ways of evaluating students' progress in these areas. Participants who earn 70% or higher in this MOOC will receive a digital badge as a mark of completion, which is like an electronic certificate. This free course starts on February the 19th, and for more information and to register for it, visit aeeteacher.org/MOOC. We also have an opportunity for you to receive a digital badge today at the end of this session. So when Mari is finished with her presentation today, which we're all very excited about, we'll share a link with you where you can complete a short quiz to receive your digital badge, which is, like I said, an electronic certificate. You must answer 2 out of the 3 multiple choice questions correctly and respond to 1 short answer question. You can only enter your information 1 time, so please take your time and make sure that you read each question carefully. You should receive your badge in an email from American English at state.gov within about a week. If you want to find out more about participating in viewing groups in your region with other English teachers like you, please contact your regional English language officer or local U.S. embassy. And now, for today's event, creating a positive classroom community. Successfully fostering relationships among learners creates a sense of purpose and belonging in the classroom, resulting in greater student participation and rapport. During the session, Mari, our presenter, will share examples of successful classroom community building activities, strategies, and techniques to implement not only on the first day of school, but throughout the year. By the end of the session, you'll have multiple activities that can be easily implemented into your own classroom in order to build a positive classroom learning community. So it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Mari Bodensteiner. Mari served as a 2-year English language fellow in Laos, where she taught professional communication skills to government officials and mentored university English teachers. She received her Master of Education from Western Washington University with an emphasis on adult education. Her interests and expertise include curriculum and program development, peer mentoring programs, and presentation skills training. Mari strives to create an effective learning atmosphere for all learners using authentic and communicative practices in her classroom. So with that, I would like to say welcome and hello to Mari. How are you today?
Hi, John Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks. You're dialing in from Washington State, is that right?
I am. Bellingham, Washington, on the west coast of the United States.
So what time is it there? I'm kind of afraid to ask.
It's currently 5 a.m.
Oh, that's not too bad.
5 a.m. is okay. Not too bad. Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
You look like you're awake and ready to go.
I am. I've had enough coffee this morning, so.
Oh, good. I have my cup right here. Oh, somewhere.
Good. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway. Oh, all right. Well, so this next part is me, right? And now, to the viewers, you have an opportunity to receive a digital badge from our team here at American English for Educators. Follow the link listed here to complete a short quiz to receive your digital badge.
Yeah, so I think participants will be
But
able to.
that's just a reminder. So it's ready for, we're ready for you to begin your presentation.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here and talking with you and all of our participants today. It's been really fun to engage in some of that dialogue with participants on the American English webinar page prior to this event. But like I said, I'm going to be talking about creating a positive classroom community today. I'm curious though where everyone's participating from. So if all the participators out there and all the educators want to share in the comment box where they are in the world, maybe we could start collecting some of those cities and countries and seeing where everyone's coming from. That would be great. Yeah, I see some responses coming in. So as those come in, I just want to share why I'm doing this talk today. So in any classroom I'm in and I teach, I really try to create a positive learning environment and creating a positive learning community. Whether I'm teaching young preschool students or older adults, I use, like you had mentioned, authentic and communicative practices in the classroom. And in my experience teaching, I've really established a few different strategies to that have proven to me to be most effective in developing that classroom community. I'm really excited to be here today, like you had mentioned, and I want to thank all the participants right now for participating. I know as educators, we are so busy, and so taking time for this teacher development series is just so great. And here in this online webinar event, we're able to create that sense of teacher community and develop our professionally develop together, which is just great. John Mark, do you see any countries coming in? Where are people participating from? I see China, Japan.
I see Afghanistan also.
Great. Yeah.
Oh, and there's a group of teachers from Teaching Women English program in Lebanon is watching today.
Oh, great. Yeah, we'd love to see some of those photos.
Positive environment in their classroom.
Great. Yeah, we'd love to see some of those photos. During that pre-discussion on the American English webinar page, I asked a few questions. What is community? Is your classroom a community, and are students active learners? And there was such great discussion. I want to share what Miss Valia Nasiba had said in that discussion. She said, even though we live in different parts of the world, we have the same feelings, problems, and achievements. Community, in her understanding, is a group of people of maybe different ages, but the same interests and goals. So today we're going to try and use some strategies to find similar interests in our students to develop that sense of community. Before we start, I just want to share the goals again really quick. The 3 goals we're going to talk about: I will define classroom communities. I will explain the importance of a classroom community, as well as share then strategies and activities to build a classroom community at your own educational institution. So before let's get started. Before I define classroom communities, I just want to share a few photos of my own classroom and my own students learning. Why our classroom community is important to me. When I first began teaching, I really struggled to find that balance of teaching all the expected content as well as making sure my students were, had their own well-being and had like success in the classroom and working on their own personal goals. My classrooms are usually very active, and I like to implement a lot of different learning activities and encourage my students to engage and discuss and share with one another. I like to promote movement in the classroom. And I understand that can be a real constraint or can be really difficult for some classrooms when you have many students or a small area. But we'll talk about how we can use group work a little bit to overcome some of those challenges that you may see. As you can see in this photo here, I have students working together on the whiteboard. I use a lot of Post-its. I have students taking notes, sharing, collaborating, and discussing. Yeah, do we want to go to the next slide?
Sure. Before we do that, I can say we got a comment from Mohammed Siddiq Barial. He says that a community is a place where a group of people come together to share their thoughts, knowledge, and deal with one another in different goals. I like that definition. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's really great. Thanks for sharing, Mohammed. I think that being able to encourage that kind of environment in our classroom is really great in getting students to trust one another and share their ideas with each other. Good. I'd like to ask the audience too, if you could use one word to describe your classroom, what would it be? If you want to write that answer in the comment box, we'll have
that's a good question. Just one word?
Yeah, just one word. How would you describe your classroom? Wow. Do you have an answer somewhere?
Do I have an answer?
Yeah.
I would say lively.
Lively. That's good. That's great. Yeah, I would probably say active.
Oh, fantastic.
Similar to you. Yeah. Here's a photo of my students. This is a class I taught in Laos. The students are in their school uniform. It is early in the morning here. It is 7 a.m. I taught a 7:30 thesis writing course to graduate students. And so that could be a struggle, having students come in so early every day to talk about their thesis work. But through developing a community and through students working together and building those relationships and trust, by the end of the semester, the students had really developed this great rapport or great relationships with one another. It was the traditional Lao wedding season, and so they're practicing the traditional Lao dancing. And so it was really great to come into class early one day and see all of my students already in class dancing together. They were awake and ready to go when class did begin.
Even at 7:30 in the morning?
Even at 7:30, which was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's incredible. We've gotten a couple of one-word descriptions. We've gotten efficient, dynamic. One person describes their classroom as the bomb, which is kind of neat, I think. And engaged. And here's a great one. Benish Aklake, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, said the classroom is a laboratory.
A laboratory. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, me too. That's good.
Experimental learning. Yeah, great. Thank you guys for sharing. It's so great to have everyone participating here with the comments and collaborating together. With all this in mind, though, developing this, it does take a lot of planning and effort on the teacher in the beginning to develop this trust in the classroom and a sense of community. So today I'm going to share some proven strategies that I've found worked really well in my classroom so we can develop strengthening these communities in our classroom.
Great, let's do it.
Yeah. So before I define classroom communities, what does community mean to you?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the participants again to share in the box,
yeah.
And then we can I'll define it and then see what some of these answers said.
Sure.
Yeah,
I can definitely answer right away. To me, community is people working together for for a common goal. Maybe people know what their roles are. People feel comfortable being themselves.
definitely. Yeah.
We see we have viewers who are saying people work together, that they're cooperative, that they're studious. A lot of cooperation.
A lot of cooperation. Great. Yeah, so as teachers and educators, I think we need to be intentional about creating this classroom community. In terms of the word community itself, many people sometimes say they know it when they see it, but it can be difficult to explain. I think Dr. Alfie Kohn has a good definition in his book, Beyond Discipline, From Compliance to Community. He describes classroom communities a place in which students feel cared about and are encouraged to care about one another.
I like that.
Yeah, they experience a sense of being valued and respected. They connect to each other, and the students matter to one another and to the teacher, so they make a difference. And then I think most importantly that in our classroom we become a part of an us. We move away from the I, me, and my, and we become an us and a we, and we work together as a team or cooperate together as a team. And going back, I really like the students matter to one another. And when you do have those smaller classes that you're able to work with and teach in, and it's obvious and evident when some students are absent because part of that community is then missing. And so you know that it's not a whole class at that time. So feeling cared about, being valued and respected, connecting, mattering to one another, and becoming an us.
I like that a lot. That's great.
Yeah. Good. So I really like the words the participants have been sharing to describe their classroom in a sense. On our American English webinar page, Nasiba had said that her classroom, to create a community, she likes to have a good sense of humor and doesn't like to take things too seriously. When we're learning English, we know mistakes happen and that's part of the English process. And so having fun and not working or worrying too much about those mistakes. And then Miss Rahiba had said, give opportunities for all learners, which I really liked.
That's great. Here's somebody from China, Lee Key, says it's a place where we feel safe and relaxed so that we can do something together and do our best.
Yeah, definitely. Feeling safe and comfortable. So students are able to learn at the best that they're able to do. That's great. So now that we've defined classroom communities, I'm going to share a few specific strategies and activities that I have used to build a classroom community. These are 4 strategies that I've used and implemented typically on the first day of school. However, we can use these really throughout the whole school year and any time you feel most effective in your classroom. Yeah, so going to that next slide. The first strategy I want to talk about is just the importance of a name and the importance of your student's name. When you can use those names in the classroom, your students will feel much more connected and be able to identify with each other more. Your name can equate to your identity, and it's part of who you are. Personally, especially as an American, I have a very, very long name. My name is Mary Frances Marie Lyons Bodensteiner. It's a very long name, and I love my name. There's a lot of meaning, but I've always been called Mari, which can get very confusing because I have Mary and Mari and Marie. And so I understand people pronounce my name incorrectly quite frequently, which is fine, but I like to be able to share the proper pronunciation of my name, as well as I know my students like that as well. When I was a young student, I always disliked that first day of school because teachers always struggled to say my name correctly. And then they would always correct me. And it was this back and forth that I didn't like because they were trying to correct me on how to say my name. But you know how to say your own name, I think, better than anyone else. And so I want to allow my students to teach me their name before I assume the pronunciation of it. On the first day of school, I make I do two things. I have students write their name on a piece of paper and then make it into a nameplate or a table tent. And you can see here in this classroom, I have some arrows pointing at a few of those. I use them throughout the whole year. And I have some different activities that we use for them. At the end of class on the first day, as students are leaving, with their permission, of course, I film them saying their name, especially when I moved to Laos. Some of that pronunciation and names were new names to me. So I was able to then go home, watch those videos, practice my students' pronunciation. And that helped when I was learning the language as well for that tonal practice. Going to that next slide. So again, no matter the size of the classroom, I have those nameplates that students use. And it's not just for me to use the student's name in the classroom, but also for students to use each other's name. And then, you know, when they see each other out of class, they're able to say their names and not just, hey, you, we're in this class together. Name cards are very simple to make. I just use usually a piece of paper. When possible, I like to use cardstock paper, which is just a little thicker so they last longer. It's more structured. And you can see just in this picture, the nameplates are just sitting in front of the student. I do group work, they move around, they bring the nameplates with them. One strategy that I like to use is using it as roll call. Instead of standing in front of the students, saying their names, reading from the paper, I just collect them each day. And then as students walk into the class, they take their name and sit down. So right at the beginning of class, I can see who is absent and who is maybe tardy. And it's easy to assess right away for me as the teacher. If I have a class of 100 students, I have the students keep those name tags and then they're just responsible for using them every day. When I do have a class of 100 students, I wish I could say I memorized and learned everyone's name, but I don't. And so having those nameplates, I'm still able to use those names throughout the class for the whole year. I also have students write sentences about them that they can share with each other. They're able to connect. There's one other activity that I use at the end of the year, which we will talk about later in this session. But going ahead, one other strategy that I can use with nameplates is exit slips. And so exit slips are a pretty common teaching strategy. Teachers can ask a question at the end of the class and they can quickly assess student comprehension. And so if I'm teaching a 2-month unit on health, I can use that one nameplate for the whole unit and have students writing what they learned each day. There's different strategies, like they could just write one sentence, today I learned, or there's the 3-2-1 strategy, 3 things I learned, 2 things I found interesting, and 1 question I still have. And so it's their own little note card of what they've learned that unit that I've found. And then just the next unit, we'll make a new nameplate and they can decorate it maybe a little differently. But then they have that one exit slip to study from.
I like this. We have a comment from Abdul Haq Walizada Bahin. He says it's a great way, I guess a name tents or name tags. It's a great way to take attendance.
Yes.
I like that. So
yes.
So I guess at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, you keep the name cards, right? And so then
yes, I do.
you can, well, whichever ones you have left, those are the students that didn't come to class today.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very quick, and we always like to save time while we're teaching in the classroom, and so being able to do that is really helpful.
Right. Well, and I was looking at, so you said you have a very long name. I noticed that your first name has more syllables than my entire name.
Yeah, I think so.
I can imagine if you were in a class, you might need 2 name cards because your name is so long. Sorry about that.
Exactly, or at least I have to write much smaller. The second strategy I use on the first day of class is a classroom agreement. I think that's pretty common. We have class rules or classroom expectations. But one thing I want you to notice is, let's look at this first list of rules that many students have said to me in the past. So for example, we have rules like don't be late, don't use your cell phone, don't talk while other students are talking, don't be lazy, don't turn in homework late. Denmark, do you notice anything in particular about those rules?
Yeah, these are rules that I used to use every day in my class. No, I'm just kidding. What I notice about them, Mari, is that they seem to be a little bit negative. Like if you try and say these words like out loud, don't be lazy. I don't
Yeah,
think a student might respond very well to something so negative.
exactly. And these are really this is everything you cannot do in a classroom. And in my classroom, I want students to know what they can do and what they can do to be successful. And so, of course, we don't want our students to be late, but we could write that as a positive. And so our classroom agreement can become positive things students can do in the classroom. So looking at the yellow classroom agreement, instead of saying something like don't be late, we can make it positive and say be on time, keep your cell phone in your bag, listen while other students are talking, be an active learner, and do your homework on time. And so just making that small change in your classroom rules and expectations and trying to find the positive in the rules and expectations. On the first day of school, I really like students to develop this on their own. I'll have students work in small groups and they'll brainstorm and work together. They can write these lists. If they suggest a negative, then I just will maybe modify it and change it to the positive. I also really like to have the students all sign with their name, the agreement, so that we can all hold each other accountable. It's not just me, the teacher, telling students to follow the rules, but then the students have this sense of community where they're all trying to uphold that agreement together.
I like this. And we have a comment from Arij Halawani. Says it's better to let students share writing the classroom norms or rules. So if they'll feel more responsible, this teacher says. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's great.
What if we just said, don't be lazy, please?
Yeah, we can just add please to the beginning of any agreement.
Right. You can be like as negative as you want to be, as long as you say please at the end. That's okay, right?
Yeah, right. I think I would suggest the yellow classroom agreements. Please be on time. Please keep your cell phone in your bag.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on here.
Yeah. So then the third thing that I do on the first day of school is a student questionnaire or a student survey. And I usually ask maybe 4 or 5 questions. You can have any questions that you want, anything you want to know about your students. I usually give my students a few minutes at the end of class to complete this and just turn it in. You can make it voluntary, you can assign it, whatever you find most beneficial for your students. However, I want to highlight question number 4 because I've found that to be most helpful for me as a teacher. Question number 4 is a chance for students to share important information with you that they may not otherwise have an opportunity to share with you. Such as a student could have family troubles, be working many jobs, have difficulty seeing, so they need to sit in the front of the classroom. They could have difficulty hearing. And so as a teacher, this information is really important and I may not always know. If a student comes to class late every day, I'm able to know why. Instead of every day being maybe frustrated with a tardy student, I know they're coming from their 3rd job. And so it kind of releases that tension with the teacher-student relationship. I'm able to know students' obligations outside of the classroom, and I can work with students on managing their time. So knowing this on the first day of school kind of sets a positive foot forward for the rest of the year. Sometimes students don't want to share, and that's fine. I don't require it, but it's really helpful when they do. And so when I give out this survey, I give them maybe a few examples of the kind of information I'm looking for so they know how to respond.
Super. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do any participants use a student survey or questionnaire in their classroom? I'll let them.
Well, I know that I always did, but instead of asking, well, what is something I should know about you, which maybe would have been just as good, I would ask them to share something interesting.
Yeah.
Like maybe it could be an interesting hobby or an interesting place that they visited. That definitely helps me to remember their names.
Definitely. I've asked maybe like, who are your favorite actors or, football, soccer players. And so then I can bring those examples into the classroom when I'm teaching too. And students then get excited and interested when you're talking about relevant information to their life.
That's great.
Yeah. And so then the fourth strategy I want to share, going to that next slide there, is just establishing classroom routines and student responsibilities. And establishing classroom routines and expectations is an important part of creating a positive classroom environment. When students know what to do and what to expect, they can feel calm and confident in your classroom and during the learning process. We had a great Facebook discussion on our American English for Educators Facebook page, and many people responded to the question, do you involve your students when coming up with classroom routines and responsibilities? If people want to share some of those ideas in the comment box again, that would be great. Some responses to that Facebook question were having students responsible for passing out papers and returning work. Another one said that they like to include the students when they do the warm-up. So these are all great examples of classroom routines and student responsibilities. I think Lauren is going to share a Teacher's Corner article on classroom management right now. If you want some more information and more articles and suggestions on that, it'll be in the comment section. Especially because classroom management is just such a big concept, and it can include so many different topics. So this article on the Teacher's Corner is really helpful to review for you. Great. So just to review 4 things that I like to do on the first day of school: the nameplates, making nameplates, having a positive classroom agreement, questionnaire or a class survey, and then establishing those classroom routines and expectations. Do we have any comments or questions before moving on? I think as those come in, I'll just kind of introduce the next few activities.
Sounds great.
I'm going to talk about 5 different activities that I like to do throughout the whole year. I have different modifications that I use with each of these so that they're most applicable with your students and learners. So the 5 activities that I'm going to share, the first one is All About Me, 2 Truths and a Lie, Would You Rather, Quiz Trade, and Memory Maker. So these are 5 activities I'm going to explain. So the first one, All About Me, this is an activity that I use at the beginning of the class or the beginning of the year, school year. And it's a good introduction to public speaking. And there's different modifications, but basically you can see the brown paper bag in the bottom left-hand corner. And I give all students a bag, or they can bring in their own bag. And I ask them to find a few objects that represent who they are as a person, things that they like to do, things that are important to them. So for example, in my bag, All About Me, I would include jigsaw puzzle pieces because I love to do puzzles. I would include my swim goggles because I really love being active and swimming with my club team. I would include my passport because I love to travel, as well as a book because I love reading. So those are 5 objects that connect to me and who I am. And so I would put those in the bag and I would share each object with the students. I would do that on the first day as a teacher for an example, and then I would have students do that the following days. I've done different, it could be voluntary. You could give students guidelines and do it as part of a project. I found it's really great introduction to public speaking because students are standing in front of the classroom talking about themselves, which is, the easiest thing to talk about is yourself because you're able to explain. And especially when you're holding that object, it makes it a little bit easier. And then also I have students use follow-up questions. And so students can explain an object and then let students ask more follow-up questions about each object. If I have a very large classroom, I maybe will have 1, 2, or 3 students present a day, and just each day throughout the school year. So if Genmark, what objects would you include in an All About Me bag?
If I were to prepare an all about me bag for myself, I don't know if I
Yeah,
could come with 5 right now. I would definitely include running shoes because I love
running shoes.
to go running. I would include maybe a guitar pick because I'm a musician.
Good.
I also love to read, so maybe a book as well. I
Perfect.
really
Yeah.
love this idea. I think this is a really easy thing to do in the classroom, and
Yeah.
I can't wait to try it.
Yeah, it's great. And if one student's presenting each day, it's only going to take a few minutes at the beginning or end of class. Or you could have more than one student present as well, of course. But yeah, it's a great way. And then students are able to find other connections among other students. If you bring in a guitar pick and someone else is a guitar player, then maybe you guys can make plans in the future to play guitar or practice together as well. Yeah, that's
That
great.
sounds great.
Yeah. The next activity is two truths and a lie. I think this is a pretty common activity in a lot of American classrooms, not so much internationally speaking. But students tell 2 truthful sentences and 1 sentence is a lie. And so you say 3 sentences and the students listening have to guess which one is false. So you're trying to trick the other students listening. So for example, John Mark, I have 2 younger sisters. I speak French and I have been to China. Which one is false?
So I'm supposed to guess which one of these is not true about you.
Yes, so 2 of them are true about me and 1 is not true about me.
Okay. I'm going to say that you have not been to China.
Okay, I have been to China.
Wow.
I know, so that was correct, but I do not speak French. So that would be the false sentence.
Hmm.
Yeah. Do you have 3 sentences?
Sure, I could say, let's see. I speak Russian.
Okay.
I have lived in Mongolia,
Okay.
and I like to drive race cars.
Ooh.
I don't know.
I don't think you drive race cars.
Yeah, good guess. Good guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. And this is a great activity and it's easy to do. You can have students work in partners or small groups, or you can have them do it in front of the whole class as a whole group activity. And there's different modifications that I use with it. On that next slide, if I'm teaching a specific grammar tense, I can tell students to write 3 sentences using the present tense. Or if I just taught a specific content or topic in the class, I can tell them to write 3 sentences about travel as it relates to their life. So for example, I have traveled to Singapore, I lived in Laos, I will go to Germany. Here I used 3 different verb tenses, but they all connected to travel. Which one of those 3 do you think are false?
Let's see. Well, I know that you lived in Laos. I'm going to say that you're not going to Germany in March.
That's correct. I
will not go to Germany. Sorry, I used the wrong structure.
Yes, I will not go to Germany in March. That is correct.
We got an interesting comment from a teacher in Japan named Rosalia. Rosalia says that Japanese students are quite shy. I've encountered this. And so Rosalia likes to do activities like this in pairs or small groups. Definitely.
And one scaffolding strategy you can use where you're building support with the students is having students do this in pairs, just partner work first. And maybe the following week, they will do it in small groups of 4 or 5 students. And then you can do a whole class activity where students practice speaking in front of the class.
Super.
Yeah. And so when you do have the 3 sentences, it's up to the student or the person speaking to say which one is false. There's no way to know. It's just a guess, just for fun.
Yeah. Great. What's next?
Yeah. So the next one is would you rather. Would you rather is an activity for students. They can practice the conditional grammar structure as well as get to know you better. So it's another good icebreaker to use in the classroom. When using would you rather, students must decide between 2 options. So for example, John Mark, would you rather read a book or watch a movie?
I would, well, I guess it depends on the book or the movie.
Your choice.
My choice, I would rather read a book. but it would have to be a good book. I don't want to read a bad book.
Of course.
Right.
That's
Okay.
good.
If I
Yeah.
start the book and I don't like it, can I switch to a movie?
Yes, you can do that.
Right. Then I
But
choose
when
book.
students are doing this activity, they must decide between one of the two options. And then you can see in the top right corner, I have a jar of popsicle sticks. To start the activity, I'll have a jar and I will write the would you rather questions on each stick, and students can grab one and then say it to each other and then practice with one another. Also, I could say the question to the class, and then students could move to the left side of the room, to the right side of the room. And so they're moving during the activity and then finding people who they agree with. Another example could be, would you rather do all of your friends' laundry for a year or wash all of your friends' dishes? John Mark, what do you think?
Well, I think I would choose to wash my friend's dishes because I don't like doing laundry. That's pretty easy.
That's good. There we go. So your students can get really creative when they're writing these questions too. When I first introduce this, I usually have example questions for them, and then I give them some time to be creative and write their own. I also want to highlight the fact that we have on our American English website page on AE Activate, we have a board game, and it's called Have You Ever or When, which is kind of similar to the Would You Rather, but Lauren will post a link to that in the comment section so you can find that board game if you want to use another version of that in your classroom.
That's right. It's not just one game, too. It's an entire collection of games.
Yes.
You can download and you can print for free.
Exactly. Yeah. Print for free, which is great.
I like free.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you rather pay or not pay?
I
Right.
would rather not pay.
I think everybody would say that.
Exactly. That's great. Yeah. And so this next activity is called Quiz Quiz Trade, and there is a lot of modifications you can make to this activity. I use this activity quite frequently in my classroom. It's called Quiz Quiz Trade, and every student has a 3x5 card or a piece of paper, and they write a question. And the question can be maybe in the beginning of the year, it's just get to know you questions. It's like, what is your favorite book? Who is your hero? Where do you live? What do you study? If I'm teaching specific content, I have the students write it about that content. But how this activity works is if I have student A and student B are partners, and they each have a question. So if you and I are partners, John Mark,
Okay.
I will ask you a question from my piece of paper. So I will read my question to you and you will answer. Right?
You ask a question to me, I answer. What do I do then?
Then after you answer, you have a question in your hand that you ask me.
Okay.
And then I answer.
I got it so far.
So we've asked, answered, asked, answered.
Got it.
And then we take our cards or our questions and we switch. So now
we switch cards or we switch partners?
We switch cards.
So I take your card, you take my card.
Exactly. Now we have new questions in our hand, right? So now with our new question, we find a new partner. And then we ask and switch again.
So I'm asking like lots of different questions, not just my question.
Exactly.
Every time I ask a question and get an answer, I trade cards and then I find a new partner.
Exactly. Yep. We're asking a lot of questions and we're answering a lot of different questions. If we go to the next slide, I think there's a visual.
Yeah, can you show me what this looks like? Because it seems a little bit challenging.
So here, this is just 6 students, for example, student A, student B, student C, student D. And the colored boxes show that they all have different questions.
Right.
Right? So now this is the first one. So student A asked student B their question, student B asked student A. And now if we go to the next box, you can see student A has a different color or a different question, but they found a new classmate who has a different question. So we're asking a lot of questions and we're answering a lot of questions.
Okay.
And so then you can see again, student A has a different card and they're asking a different question. So the question they just answered, they're asking to the next student.
Okay. This is a lot of student talk time. I love it.
It's a lot of student talk time in a very short time. So sometimes I'll give students 5 minutes, talk to as many students as you can. Or I will say, talk to 7 students. So then they're asking and answering 7 different questions. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Are there any questions? When I do this activity for the first time, because it's sometimes confusing, if I have 24 students, I will have 24 questions and give each student a question. So they understand that they're just switching the questions a lot. When students write their own questions, sometimes they want to keep that question, but it's not their question. It's for everyone to use.
Yeah, I love it. It's great for classrooms where students might be shy. Maybe they're lower level. Cheng Zhu in China says it's useful for us teachers in China. I think it's useful for teachers everywhere, anywhere that you need to get students practicing with each other.
And this is great because it's a low prep or low preparation for the teacher, because I will have students write the questions and the students have to write the questions of the card, and I give them a topic. So if I just taught a lesson on sports, sports, they have to write a question about something they just learned. Or maybe I just gave them 10 vocabulary words. They have to write a question using one of the vocabulary words.
Got it.
I use this pretty frequently in my classroom, and as soon as students understand the process of how it works, it can go very quickly. So it's a good warm-up strategy to review the last week's content or whatever lesson was just previously taught, as well as even a review of the class. So you can use it at the beginning or the end. And so you can decide the different modifications of how you want to use that in your classroom.
Super.
Yeah, great. The last activity that I do, activity number 5, I call Memory Maker. This is an activity that I use on the very last day of class, and only on the last day of class. When I first began teaching, I really struggled on how I wanted to conclude my class, how I wanted to end. And I always wanted to end on a positive note and have students leaving the classroom feeling really positive about the class and what they just learned throughout that semester. So going back, using those nameplates. So the nameplates that we had talked about earlier with paper folded in half with students' names.
Right.
I have students open that, so it's a blank sheet of paper. And students share positive feelings that they've had throughout the class. So they share positive remarks with each student. In my experience, I feel like it's really perfect conclusion to the class. Students spend a few minutes just reflecting on everything they've learned, the relationships they've made, how they've connected, and how their classmates had supported them throughout the year. And then students kind of walk around the classroom, going to each desk or each student's name and writing just one positive comment. If you go to that next slide, I just have a few examples of things I've seen from students. Thank you for always participating in class. You've always brought up great ideas during group projects. Thanks for helping me study before the final exam. You're always so positive. Thanks for always smiling in class. And so and students can maybe share a short story or remark about each student. And so I like to leave maybe 5-10 minutes at the end for students to share with each other. And then students are able to take their nameplate home and read these just nice remarks, nice feelings as they leave the classroom.
That's great. So just to verify, we have a question from China. So the students write on the nameplate that they've had with them all year.
Yeah.
And then they take it and then they take it home at the end. You don't collect it.
I don't collect it. They take it home. It is theirs. It's their little memory of the class. Yeah. everything.
That's great.
Yeah, so just to quickly review the 5 activities that I use throughout the year, the All About Me bag, Would You Rather, the Quiz Trade, if we want to skip ahead, yep, True Truths and a Lie, and then of course the Memory Maker. So those are 5 activities that I use throughout the year. Any questions or anything? I guess we'll let some comments come in. Going to that next slide, I just want to take a few minutes with the time we have left. And I'm wondering what activities teachers are already doing in their classroom to build activity, to build community. Are there activities that they're always doing or that they like to use? I'm seeing some answers coming in from around the world. This is great. I just like to see different strategies. And I know that some people have maybe used some of those strategies from our American English page as well.
Yeah, we actually do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
We have one question. How often do we do these kinds of activities? I mean, are you doing community building activities in every lesson all the time?
I have to find what's best for my students. I feel I like to do a warm-up at the beginning of every class. And then so once they know some of these activities, it's easy for them to build in. The Quiz Trade, I usually use that maybe once or twice a unit. And so that it's questions pertaining to that specific unit that students are able to review and learn, especially when they're using the vocabulary words in the question. With Two Truths and a Lie, sometimes when we're teaching, we have maybe 3 minutes at the end of class or, a few minutes before we're ready to get started. And so that's a good example, Two Truths and a Lie or Would You Rather, of easy activities that you can use in those short times.
Yeah, I like the idea of having a handful of activities ready to go in case maybe you have extra time at the end of class or something happens and you have to come up with something very quickly.
Yeah,
but we have
definitely.
other questions, though, around the time. And I'm thinking, like, what if there's not enough time to do one of these activities? Or, for example, with the, what's the one with the bag where you...
All About Me.
All About Me. What if you have 100 students in class and people have, that's 500 things that they're bringing in their bags?
Yeah, that is definitely a time constraint. And then when you have a large class like that, I would recommend doing that activity in small groups. And so having groups of 4, maybe 5 students, and they can all be sharing at once, and then that activity wouldn't take as long. And so not every student gets to connect with each other, but you're building those smaller communities to start. So you're just working in groups of 5 and then building from there. Okay,
and another question, I like that answer a lot. What about... you have a question. Is it good to always be positive?
Well, I think that's a good question, which it can be difficult because sometimes we aren't positive as humans, but bringing in that positive attitude as the teacher, you set that tone for your classroom and for your learners. And so if you come into class really negative one day, your students will react to that, and then they will not be positive. And so of course, we are not always positive all day long, but when I am in the classroom, I am positive for my learners. I love learning, and I want my students to know that I love learning so that they are just as excited to learn. I think it's really important to, in a student-centered classroom, acknowledging the fact that I am learning from my students and then thanking them and showing that appreciation that I can learn from them as much as they can learn from me. Especially when my students are learning English and I learn something new about their native language or about their culture, wherever I'm teaching, I really like to take time and acknowledge that and tell them, thank you, that I learned something new.
I love that. I love that. And we have a comment from a participant named Ching Ching that I really, really love. And it's really important to remember, it'll take time for EFL learners to build a comfortable and secure community. So, for example, if one of our participants wants to try one of these activities, probably the first time it may not go very well, but that doesn't mean you should give up, right?
That's exactly right. And I've given our participants a lot of activities. I don't recommend going to class tomorrow and doing 5 activities. Just choose one that you want to try with your students, and do that a few times in the classroom in the next couple weeks and see how it goes and see how your students react. As teachers, we have to be intentional about creating this community. And so starting to use some of these activities in your classroom, you're able to find those connections with the students.
I think that's great.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
great. Any other questions coming in?
You were getting a lot of thank yous from our participants, which is great. I hope that
Great.
these ideas have been useful.
Yeah, I hope for all of the participants, even if they just take one activity and try it, that's a success. And that's, as a teacher, you can tell your students you're trying something new, and they'll be excited that you're trying something new, they're learning something new. And so being able to do that together as a classroom and starting to build those communities, I think
Great.
you'll
Great.
find a positive change. Yeah.
Well, Mari, thank you very much for your presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much. We did questions. The last thing I'll leave you guys with, a person who feels appreciated will always do more than expected. And so when you show that appreciation towards your students, they will surprise you and they will do more than the expected, and they will, grow as learners. So
Wonderful.
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I had such a great time talking with everyone and reading your comments. I hope you can continue this conversation on our American English Facebook page, sharing your ideas. Thank you.
Great. Thanks again, Mari.
Yeah, thank
Well,
you.
so this is very exciting. So now it's time for our participants, for everyone out there, to earn their digital badge, which, like I said, is an electronic certificate. And this is a wonderful alternative to a paper certificate, because you can keep it forever. You don't have to worry about losing it. You can send it to people in an email. It's really, really useful. And it's basically a certificate that's online that's got all the information from today's session. And it's attached to your name and your contact information. But to earn it, you have to complete a short quiz. It's not that difficult. If you watched today's session, you will get them correct. You have to get 2 out of 3 correct. You can only do it once, so please be careful and take your time. Go to this link that is right here, and you will receive your badge within about a week of having completed it. So please complete the quiz, and good luck. And thank you very much, everybody, for being here today. We had a wonderful time.
Thank you.
And don't forget about the MOOC on February 17th.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. This is moderator Kate, just chiming in really quickly. I want to say another big thank you for our moderator, John Mark King, who interviewed our English language specialist, Mari Bodensteiner, today about classroom community. Everyone, we will go ahead and leave this slide up for a few minutes so that you can take the quiz and hopefully earn a digital badge. You will probably receive an email from americanenglish@state.gov within 1 week if you answer the questions correctly to receive your digital badge from all of us here at American English for Educators. So at this time, our presenters will probably be signing off soon. So if you want to say any more thanks, feel free to do that in the Facebook comments below. But again, we thank you so much, John Mark and Mari, for your presentation today. And we'll go ahead and leave this slide up for everyone for a few minutes so that you can have a chance to earn your digital badge. So thanks again, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Hello, everyone. This is moderator Kate. We're going to close our Facebook session and our Zoom session in about 3 minutes. So if you have not completed the quiz, please feel free to go ahead and do that now. If you have any questions about participating in our Facebook Live series or our Zoom webinar series, please email American English Webinars at elprograms.org, and we'll be happy to answer your questions there. Thanks so much again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you for our next session on January 31st, right here on the same Zoom link or the same Facebook page at the same times. So thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next session. We'll be closing this link in about 3 minutes. So if you haven't completed the quiz, please feel free to do so now. Thank you again for joining us, everyone. We're going to go ahead and close this session. We look forward to seeing you for our next session called Exploring Generational Culture Through Oral Histories on January 31st. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.